Well, my friends, it's time for some questions and some ideas, if not answers, to those questions. And I'm appreciative of you all sending in your comments and your questions this time. We got a very long, interesting kind of comment from our friend Hal Taylor, who talked about the left brain and the right brain and the relative kind of functionality of those relative to kind of geopolitics and life in general. And interestingly enough, it is congruent with the other two questions that we have. And so I'm going to put the whole thing together in one kind of general comment. Steve Yavarsi, our old friend from Chicago, was responding to a comment that I made sometime not too long ago that said that Martin Armstrong says that 2023 is going to be the year from hell. And Steve says, so how do you prepare for a year from hell, I guess? And then somebody named Well says, what does it take to be a completely sovereign human, and what are the actionable steps to be able to achieve it? And I guess I'll take kind of Steve's question and use that as the basis for kind of responding to these other kind of comments and questions. Steve, the year from hell is Martin Armstrong's conventional assessment of what's going to happen, as opposed to unconventional. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. And what he is suggesting is that there are all kinds of geopolitical, food availability and energy shortages, all kinds of things like that are inbound, including kind of the fabric of the Western nations, because he thinks that, he doesn't think, but he says that his computer says that by 2023, by January, February, first quarter of 2023, that World War III will start. And that by 2025, that there will be a global civil war, which will end about 2027 with the breakup of many different countries, including the United States. Let me remind you that Martin Armstrong's computer is based upon, and the programming is based upon the cyclical nature of reality, and that everything in life oscillates, it goes on cycles, and one way or another. I mean, you can certainly notice that in terms of personal relationships, and you can see it in business relation and economic things, and certainly in politics and other such stuff, and the weather for that matter, and climate. And so what he has done is isolated 72 different kind of components of the larger system, and the cyclical kind of characteristics of those, some long periods, some shorter, more rapid. And what he does is generate a synthetic perspective that says, considering all of these things all at once, here is what the natural underlying kind of metabolism almost, of the system. That's how it's going to work, because that's the way those are the underlying kind of driving forces. That, by the way, is a conventional point of view, and that does not consider the possibility of wildcards, what I call wildcards, which I wrote a book about. It does not consider the possibility of unusual, anomalous things happening. Say the ET shows up, or I don't know, that you get an Earth volcano, a giant volcano that blankets the earth and everything gets cold, or some anomalous thing that is not kind of a part, or certainly in conventional kind of terms, is not a part of the underlying kind of the wheels of how the whole system works together. And so you've always got the possibility of, particularly in these days and this time, of these amazing kind of events that would happen that would just drive the whole system off in a different direction. It could be a revolutionary discovery in energy, for instance, that would, among other things, you know, collapse the existing energy markets and so on. I mean, just there's a whole bunch of things like that that have really not existed in the way that they do now in the past. The kind of the qualitative and quantitative kind of nature of these kind of breakthrough events are really quite big and profound, and they're only getting worse. And so you should always hold out on the side that say, maybe Marty's system is a wonderful predictor of how things would work based upon the underlying kind of metabolism of the past. But we're getting into this extraordinary transition that has never in kind of recorded history, at least we've experienced before, and that's anomalous. And so it gets you this kind of ramp function change where you get really rapid change in a short period of time. And if that's the case, then I think, as I understand Marty's system, at least, it's probably not represented explicitly or fundamentally in his system. But nevertheless, in the short term, at least, I think you could make a pretty good case that the forces that are extant within the system that have carried on for forever are manifesting themselves and are like I say, in the next couple of years, at least, 3 years, are going to push us into the kind of space that Marty is describing. And from that point of view, not the unconventional, but the conventional point of view, then preparing for this, what's coming up is, it's got a couple of different levels. So the one level, of course, is the physical. And so there are things like money and energy and food and shelter and all the kind of the most basic kind of Maslow hierarchy kind of supporting functions that we all participate in one way or another. And what Marty is essentially saying is that there are such big changes in this kind of space that that you're going to have to do something different than what you've done in the past. So there are those basic things. You have enough food, know where you can get, where you can source food. If you live in a city, you better get out, figure out something other than going down to the supermarket or to the food store, because those suppliers may not be available and food may not be there. And so there are advantages to knowing who your suppliers are from, who literally from the farm, right? And the same is the case with things like water. How do you have backup water? I live here in West Virginia, and we have wells. And now the issue then becomes, how do you generate enough electricity in order to support your wells? And so we've got backup generators that work on both gasoline and diesel fuel, but that only lasts for a certain period of time, and so until you run out of fuel. And so there's a variety of those kinds of things that one should think about. Also, in the conventional space, there's kind of a mindset that I think needs to be a part of all of this. And that is that you realize that these kinds of possibilities are real.
that's a point to be made because there are most of the conventional media is trying to tell you that in one way or another that what's likely to happen is from their point of view not likely to happen. They seem to think that it's even though you're going to have all of these shortages, somehow you're going to make your way through in some magical kind of way. Um, they certainly here in the United States, it's not kind of settled in here that that there might be real problems and shortages here in the States. So there's a mindset that's got to switch, and you've got to somehow extract yourself from the mainstream media. You got to think for yourself. This, by the way, goes toward the question about a sovereignty and a sovereign citizen. And at some point, you need to make up your own mind and make your own decision about what's happening or what's likely to happen, and not just listen to NPR or MSNBC or whoever it is that you listen to, Yahoo News. I don't know, but they've got all a narrative that they're promoting, and that narrative is not going to prepare you for high levels of disruption. That narrative is going to kind of position you so that you become subservient to and controlled by the larger system in general, and the governments and large corporations and things in particular. But if you are on the other side of this equation and you're trying to say, in the middle of this kind of dichotomy, this extraordinary kind of decision process is happening that is going to uh, give us all the opportunity to capitulate and become part of this technocracy and the technocratic kind of initiative to gain control. If you want to extract yourself from that, which is kind of an integral part of, I think, Steve's question and the other ones as well. If you want to not play that, because you don't need to do anything other than what they tell you to do, if if you want to go down that track. But if you don't, then you got to come out and you got to be somebody else. And you've got to, first of all, realize that there's another way. That's this other kind of level of kind of perspective, that there's another way in which to live and deal with this. And the essential kind of issue, a characteristic of this other track is a self-empowerment. And what it is it about broadening awareness of how reality works and who you are and how your capabilities and possibilities are. And so in this process, what you need to do is get outside of the constraints and all of the narrative and start to think for yourself and try to figure out what you think you need and how you need to provide for yourself. So there's a real shift that you got to do. And that shift is about independence and self-empowerment. And it's about realizing that you have the capability and to become something quite different than you've been in the past. And that's an integral part of the emergence of this new human, and being empowered and moving into that new space. Now, there's a unconventional kind of space up above where the bigger agenda, the bigger kind of event is happening, it seems to me. And that has to do, I think, more broadly with a non-physical area, if you will. It's some people would call it spiritual in a generic kind of using that term, not certainly religious kind of ways. That there is this larger reality that we do not commonly understand. There is this non-physical space that is an integral part of this universe, this operating space in which we, live, and that is not what you can see with your eyes, and hear with your ears in conventional kind of ways. And that this is part of this evolution into this new human, it seems to me. This expanded awareness that this is not only an expanded awareness of who you are, which I've just described, that you've got all these capabilities and you're bigger than who you think you are, but it's an expanded awareness of the larger environment, on non extraterrestrial life and angels and demigods and any number of other entities, intelligence, sometimes extraordinary, wildly powerful and intelligent beings that all exist in this larger kind of space. And essentially the process of kind of moving yourself into that unconventional kind of space is one that is intrinsically liberating, right? You first of all have taken the initiative to go off away from the conventional kind of perspective and the conventional narrative. And that in itself breaks you away from all of these attempts that surround us all to get us to do what they want us to do. And so that in itself is liberating. But then as you move into and learn more and open yourself to some of these other spaces, then it changes your whole perspective and you see things much, much greater. So I hope that's helpful. And I hope if you find this helpful that you'll do all those things you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to click on this and do the little bell and like it and do those kinds of things. And then that will tell us that we're on the right track and that it'll help for lots of kind of reasons. There's even a little bit of economics in there that makes it beneficial. And so we hope that's helpful to you. I hope that if you're in the area or you want to join us by live stream, that on the 19th, you'll join us with Mark Gober in Transition Talks. Mark's a wonderful young guy who has got a whole idea that says that government is essentially incompatible with the essence of what human beings are. I mean, that's a variation of what we've just been talking about here. It says that there's a new world, and that new world is compatible with the essence of who you are and the power that you are. And all those institutions and their structures and other kind of things are all based upon this other notion of kind of control. And that's not where the future that I'm going is. Mark's going to come and talk about in practical kind of terms how different kind of governments and organizations and structures could work. And if that's of interest to you, then you can find it in transitiontalks.org. And if you can join us in Berkeley Springs, that'll be great. Mark's going to bring a bunch of his books and we're going to give them away to the first 50 people that show up. So that'll be fun. And then if you can join us by live stream, that's a great way to do it no matter where you are. And then you can watch the live stream for a couple of months, I think is what we're leaving it open now afterwards. So thanks a lot and we'll see you again.